All I did was listen and obey him. And all I said was, give me the tools I need and I will serve you with everything I've got. I will stop asking whether you exist. I will stop complaining about my own inner conflicts. I will stop complaining about how it hurts me or how I feel sad or how I feel like this. I will stop doing that and I will just serve, because children who are suffering to the degree I saw suffering that day are suffering more than I ever have in my Western world and inside my own internal mind. I'm creating my own suffering, but these children are physically suffering without reason. And I said to God, I'll stop doing this. I'll stop dancing this dance with my ego and with my mind. I'll stop dancing this dance with my lower self, with the internal beast that seems hell-bent on destroying me. Hey guys, so back from my run. Naturally feeling quite tired because I ran on an empty stomach. But because I'm feeling tired, I'm in a very much more peaceful state. So to try and give an idea of what I mean is, I think a lot of people do a lot of thinking. And even in spiritual practice, people think. And this is where a problem comes in, because words are a tiny fragmental spectrum of your reality. And it's only in switching those words off that you can start to experience life in a different way. We see it very readily with our pets, where they're very playful constantly because they don't have any internal chatter to slow them down from expressing that. So for me today, I've got a lot to think about. And to give you an idea what I've got to think about today, I've had a newborn baby brought to me who won't stop vomiting and diarrhea because they live in bad home conditions, and I need to work out whether it's good for me to try and find space for them to live here at Featherstail. I've had a new disabled child come to live with me, which I wasn't expecting so quickly today, because the parents quite simply weren't coping. I tried to give her away so many times I decided that perhaps the child wouldn't be cared for very well if she stayed there. They tried to give her away like 5 times. On top of that, I've got every daily running going, the daily routine of running thing is going on. Medication for dogs, medication for children. I've got a member of the community who's desperately sick in hospital at the moment, and it just so happens her sister works with the disabled children, because this girl is also disabled and she's had to go and stay at the hospital. That left me with no staff for the night shift to sleep with 2 of the children who need 24-hour sleeping care, whereas the other children can be mixed between one lady. I've then got, on top of that, I've got to register the charity in the UK, which means I'm supposed to scan all these items and get the land registry forms from the Tanzanian government, which is not easy to do. I've got to stay on top of food deliveries. I've got to work out the next set of fundraising to go on. I've got to start catching up on my posts on Facebook for the children who need sponsors out there, because there are so many and people seem to only sponsor when I do post. I've got a construction site that just started to my right. I'm trying to plan the sewage system for the village, which I know very little to nothing about. I've got a problem with solar power. There's no sun at the moment because the weather's bad and I've run out of power, so I need to go and hook up the power to my car and bring it into the house. I have a lot to think about. A lot more than the average person. It's not a competition, because it doesn't matter. Some person's minds work better than others. In my past, before I'd fasted and meditated and learned how to do all this stuff, then the amount of stuff I've got to think about now I'd have had a nervous breakdown, I'd have buckled. But thankfully in meditation I've built myself to a position of strength where I can deal with it. Now, the thing is, before my run, I was thinking about these things a lot. I wasn't particularly coming up with any solutions, but I was thinking about them. And it's the same when you're looking for something and you look and look and look and you get stressed out, you can't find it. And sometimes when you sit down, you remember where it is and you go and get it. It's a little bit like that. So I'm still getting the answers to the solutions and putting everything in its place for tomorrow, but I'm doing it from a place where I'm not thinking. I'm doing it from the internal part of myself, and it's happening more easily for me because I've gone for a run. And in effect what I've done is I've crucified my flesh. Now in that stillness, in that peace and quiet, this is where I get my guidance from God. This is where I get my synchronicities, which have led me to build everything that's gone on around me here. It started by following a simple sign whilst fasting. I followed a numerological synchronicity which I deemed to be a message from God. I followed it, and in following it, we now have hundreds of children and many children who call me Father. If I hadn't followed what I knew was God on that day, none of this would have happened. And I don't know what would have happened to the children. Perhaps he'd have found another servant, I don't know. But what I'm trying to get at, it's in silencing your flesh and not thinking. Even if you're doing spiritual practice, many people are thinking about doing the spiritual practice and they miss out on it. That's why I'm not a big fan of meditation classes as such. You're better off putting on some music that's beautiful and holding your breath until your brain stops thinking, and then you'll slip into a meditative state, if only for 1 second. At least you'll touch it. You go the next day, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever you have to do. But that's where you'll commune and find and speak with God. And this is what I mean by an altered state of consciousness. I ran on an empty stomach and my mind and body is too tired to think anymore. But it's still able to flow, and I'm still able to express the energy through myself that I want to express. I have no idea what I'm about to say from one word to the next, but as I'm doing this video. But it's coming through me because I've silenced my mind, and I feel that I can speak from a different part of me. And as I say words, I put a tiny little spectrum of what we do. It would take 1,000 poets, 1,000 years and 1,000,000 books each to come close to trying to express actually how love feels inside us. And most of the time they'll fail. But at least that's why we have beautiful things like poetry and painting and music. Because we try to express something we're feeling with a different form. Be it music or, in poetry's case, with words, like I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to describe an altered state of consciousness with words, and it's nearly impossible to do. Especially with the English language, because if you don't go through those stages of consciousness and you don't experience them, then you can't use the labels that I use from esoterics, like I've moved up into the level of water, into air, into fire, into the new mind. At least if you're going into parts of India, they have words for the different levels of consciousness, and people know these words. In English, people don't have words for that, so they don't know these words. The language is restrictive, spiritually speaking. On that side of things, it's hard to express it. Hard to describe what you're feeling. That's how I should word that. But it's in silencing my mind I managed to alter my consciousness. I'm much more, of course I've been running, so I've got endorphins going and I have the runner's high, etc., etc. But I'm more at peace with myself. I feel it here. And because of that, my mind chatter has gone. And I'm still solving the problems. The same questions I had running through my brain before I ran are running through my brain. But they're just not doing it loudly. And instead of being questions that I think repetitively, it comes, I find the solution to put it in place tomorrow, it passes. And it happened because I got my flesh out of the way. In running, whilst I had no food in my body, sacrificed my physical body in a way. I crucified it. Just as Jesus, to ascend to the Father, to hear guidance from the Lord, or for Jesus to go to the Lord, to go to heaven, to go to God, his physical body had to die for him to ascend to the Father. We know this. He was crucified. But when he was crucified, he was injured 5 times. The wrists, the feet, and the spear in the ribs, where water and blood came out. Water being that level of consciousness that unless you've experienced it, it's hard to explain. But it's a state where you're leaving thought, and you're coming into a thoughtless state, and you feel peace in your body. Now this comes to my last video about taming the beast within, which is just an analogy for the 5 senses, the desire body, the 5 sense pleasures. The part of you that wants to sit and overeat a little bit. The part of you that eats a spoonful of peanut butter and wants to go for the rest of the jar. But you say no because you know it's going to lower your vibration and crash you into your body and make you feel like rubbish. But if you stay in that higher state, you can go into a meditation, you can pray, you can commune with God. And it's when I've done these things in my life, when I've fasted, when I've done endurance exercise, that I've altered the way my body's working and I've heard God. Be it through synchronicity or be it through spoken word. This is how it's gone on with me, or be it through other forms of communication like my feathers. Now, I'm wondering if my dogs are going to go crazy. This is giving up on your This is overcoming your physical body, to crucify it, to surrender the five senses somehow, to do something it doesn't want you to do necessarily. It doesn't want to run a long distance on an empty stomach, but once it has, it's out of the way, and you can feel the love and the peace of mind and the silence of mind to commune and pray with God. And it's from that place that I've heard God. I can only presume it's the same for everybody else. Now, if, of course, you're constantly thinking and using logic and so on and so forth, then you're never going to commune with God because you're blocking it. If God's on this frequency and you're on this frequency as a normal state, you have to raise up to that frequency. You have to change the channel so you can observe that realm of things, so you can communicate back and forth. And to do that, this is what I do. I crucify the flesh, so to speak. Now, another way to look at it is you cross... another person who did it, well, all in the Bible have done this. I'm going to pull it onto Christianity because most of my viewers are Christian and see this. I know there's a lot of Muslim as well, and I'm not as learned on the Quran, and one day I hope to be, so I can find the same allegories within there, because I know there are allegories in there. I've seen them. But in Christianity, with, for instance, Moses has to flee his ego. He has to flee the thinking mind. Now, what that means, it doesn't mean the ego is evil. My ego helps me every day. It provides me with food. It provides me with sometimes the want to get up and go. But what I mean is the negative aspect of yourself, the doubts and the desires and the need to fulfill your five sense pleasures, etc. It chases Moses down, and he crosses the Red Sea. The red is always representation of the emotion in the Bible. So he crosses that, but how does he do it? He holds up his staff and he battles. He holds the staff and he holds the staff until he finds the ability to cross over. So he has physical exertion holding his staff. But what was the staff earlier in the story? It was a snake. It was the energy that raises up your spinal column. And when you cross the emotions, when that energy is held, when you hold it high in meditation and you defeat your five senses, you cross the emotions. You escape that physical demand that your body has, where it tells you to overeat, where it tells you to indulge in this, where it tells you, go on, that'll be fun, but it won't necessarily be the best thing for you. And then you get towards the promised land, the land flowing with milk and honey, serotonin from the pituitary, DMT from the pineal, amber, milk and honey. When you conquer that, then you will hear God. You will hear God. You will. If it works for me, why won't it work for you? But you've got to work at it. Now, for many people, it just seems to them, well, that's illogical. But the problem is with logic is it's your intellect. And that means that you haven't bust down the Gestapo of your mind. I keep having trouble with that word today. You haven't gotten away from that. So you always think you know. You don't know. Science doesn't know. Science can't explain atoms. It doesn't get it. It still doesn't understand how when you observe ions passing through something, they change behaviour to when you don't observe them. They don't get this. Your observational force in itself changes the reality around you. So if you're constantly not in a state of ease with it, which I presume the person who reached out on this question that started me on this video, this idea for this video, is not at ease or at peace with the fact that they don't feel or commune with God, or they wouldn't be asking and reaching out. If they were at peace, they'd say, I'm at peace with myself, I'm at peace with the world, and I get on with things as it is. But they're not saying that to me. They're saying, how can you say it's this way? I've tried, I've called out to God, I've loved God, and it doesn't work. Ask and it's given, I dare say. It's often how it works. I was a person like that. I would call out to God with my mouth. What use is that? When the carnal mind, according to all spiritual texts, is not subject to the laws of God, how will God ever respond to me using only my carnal mind? So, I'm not here to prove to anyone or argue with anyone that God is and God isn't. If you are comfortable in your life and you love what you do and you feel fulfilled and you feel so filled with love and you're out in the world being your highest good and you don't feel that there is a God, then who am I to stop you? Who am I to say anything about that? But all I'm saying is everything I've done around me, everything is God. God did it all. All I did was change my frequency, alter my state of consciousness to meet Christ in the air in that higher level of consciousness, to understand what I was supposed to do, what was my highest good, where was I supposed to go. And I told God, upon watching that video all those years ago on YouTube of those children with polio, I said, God, I can't bear this. I can help them. Why should I live a comfortable life while children who are surely more innocent and have done less bad in the world than I ever have, that will do less bad in the world than I have, that deserve it more. They deserve comfort in my eyes back then more than I did. How can they live like that while I'm sitting here in comfort that I don't feel I've really even earned? I said, I'll do something. I was fasting and I cried out. I said, someone should do something about this. And God said, you're something. You're someone. You are someone who can do something about this, is how it came to me. God told me to come here. God told me to do this. All I did was listen and obey him. And all I said was, give me the tools I need and I will serve you with everything I've got. I will stop asking whether you exist. I will stop complaining about my own inner conflicts. I will stop complaining about how it hurts me or how I feel sad or how I feel like this. I will stop doing that and I will just serve, because children who are suffering to the degree I saw suffering that day are suffering more than I ever have in my Western world and inside my own internal mind. I'm creating my own suffering, but these children are physically suffering without reason. And I said to God, I'll stop doing this. I'll stop dancing this dance with my ego and with my mind. I'll stop dancing this dance with my lower self, with the internal beast that seems hell-bent on destroying me. And I'll go and I'll help. You provide what I need. I get here, I wind up with an acre of land and a house and an NGO structure. I didn't know how to set up an NGO in Tanzania. I didn't speak the language. I knew nothing of the systems. But God handed me one within 3 months of coming here. I had to battle to get rid of a very dark being who was causing a lot of corruption for this NGO when I first came here. But I battled him because I knew God had called me here. So there I was, left alone. Okay, God, you're providing me the tools I need. I've now got a house, a piece of land, a laptop, and a voice. Here we go. Now, he's done it again and again with me. Something just jumped off the tree to the house. He's done it again and again with me. Where I ask and he provides. You know, one day I said to God, I'm never going to do YouTube videos ever again. I said this in 2014. I said, I'm not doing them. My camera's old, can't afford a new one. It's annoying trying to charge it. I never get enough footage done to edit the video I want to do. It doesn't work. I didn't say anything to anybody, and that afternoon a lady in New York who I've never met donated me a Sony Handycam HD. She sent me a message saying, I get a feeling this camera will do better in your hands than it will sitting in my cupboard. God will answer you if you're doing it for the right reasons. And if you reach to God, he will reach to you. He just will. He did for me, so why won't he for you? That's all I could really say. I don't think God is choosy about his children. I just think he needs to be able to hear you and see that you mean business. I promised I'd stop dancing the dance with my lower self. I said I'll stop doing that. Purely because I see those children need it more than me. They need comfort. And I don't need to be thinking like this anymore. Even if I have an internal battle, I'll not think about it and I'll just focus on dealing with helping those children. He heard me do that, and he showed me where to go. He knew I meant it. I think he understood that I meant it. Now, I'm not saying that other people who are seeking God are not sincere. That's not what I mean by that. But I'm just saying, in my experience, so long as I reached, he reached back. As long as I held up my staff, as Moses did. As long as I battled through the fasting, as long as I battled through my needy 40 days and 40 nights without food. As long as I held true my prayer and my meditation, and I held that energy straight in my body, he responded, and bit by bit, he gave me all I needed. Through synchronicity, through guidance, sometimes even through a whisper like he did with Dominic. But it all begins with taking away the thinking mind. Because when you take away the thinking mind, that thing that I called God, that Father that I feel around me, even as I speak this now, and his beautiful angels, which I feel and see guarding this area and the children constantly every day, can then talk to you. But as long as you're imprisoned in your thinking mind, as long as you're imprisoned in artificial light like TV and artificial media, light from other media sources, as long as you're imprisoned in there, how are they ever going to speak to you? If you need to set your attention this way to talk to God, and it's always over this way, how are you ever going to hear it? What's coming? Beat your lower nature. Crucify your flesh as Jesus did, fasting, long distance exercise, whatever it takes. Marathon prayer, whatever. But whatever you have to do, do it. And then I can only hope for you that God will come to you as he came to me. And I don't think he's picky and choosy. And I think he'll come to everybody who reaches to him. As long as you're not complaining and letting your thinking mind get in the way, he will come. But if you don't hear him straight away, don't think you're a victim. Just go back and be patient. I'm a man who once tried to take his own life. There was a time where I couldn't hear God, and God couldn't hear me, I presume. Or perhaps he could hear me, I just couldn't hear him. So, we can all get there. Just takes work. Just takes work. It's took me 31 years to get used to being inside a human body. And predominantly that's been happening because I'd lived in a system that made me unused to being inside my human body. So shut off your thoughts, shut off the things that make you think, shut off the media, and in some way make your flesh quiet. If it means you have to eat less, or if it means you have to eat only one meal a day a little bit, or it means you have to fast for a little bit in spiritual pursuit, then do it. Endurance exercise, if it's an option, do it. On an empty stomach, it'll work for you. It does for me, anyway. So that's my bit. That's what I mean by changing your consciousness. And that's how God always speaks to me, is when I don't think. So when I think, I always get it wrong. Okay, much love, guys.